The Balkans had seen the sparks. Now came the fire. In the first days of the war, Turkey seized Cyprus in a single day. Bulgaria pushed deep into eastern Macedonia, and insurgents spilled over the ridges of Shar Planina. But as smoke drifted across the borders, another storm was brewing in the north. Serbia had not yet moved in full. That was about to change. In Belgrade, armored engines rumbled to life. Convoys of tanks and artillery rolled down highways under cover of darkness. Bridges across the Danube were sealed for military traffic. Soldiers received sealed orders in barracks across Niš, Kraljevo, and Kragujevac. Everyone knew where they were going, though no one dared say it aloud. The Serbian president had promised Skopje that Belgrade would act decisively. Now the promise would be fulfilled, and the target was Kosovo. For weeks, insurgent groups from Kosovo and Albania had been pouring across the Macedonian frontier, bleeding the defenders on the slopes of the Shar Planina. But their home front was exposed, and Serbia intended to strike it with overwhelming force. The operation was codenamed Iron Thunder. The offensive began before dawn. Serbian artillery batteries hidden in the forests outside Kuršumlija and Raška fired in unison. Shells streaked over the border, slamming into defensive outposts along the Ibar and White Drin rivers. Radar in Pristina lit up as incoming missiles cratered airstrips, fuel depots, and command centers. Communications faltered in the opening minutes. Columns of armor pushed across the frontier in 3 thrusts. One south along the Ibar Valley toward Mitrovica, another through Podujevo straight at Pristina, and a third swinging west toward Peja to cut the routes from Albania. The pace was relentless. Kosovo's defense had been planned with Albania's support. Bunkers dotted key hills. Anti-tank teams were hidden in the forests, and foreign volunteers had even joined the ranks. But Serbia brought numbers and firepower that dwarfed them. Hundreds of tanks and infantry fighting vehicles surged forward, with helicopter gunships flying low overhead, strafing roads and blasting trenches with rockets. The battle for Mitrovica erupted by mid-morning. Local defenders tried to hold the northern bridges across the Ibar River, barricading streets with buses and concrete slabs. For hours they resisted, knocking out several armored vehicles with shoulder-fired missiles. But the Serbian advance did not pause. Engineers threw temporary crossings over the river, and armored brigades swept into the city's northern districts. Street fighting flared in every block. But by afternoon, Serbian flags were raised on the municipal buildings. In the center thrust, Pristina became the true prize. By noon, Serbian mechanized brigades had closed within artillery range. Shells slammed into the outskirts, toppling apartment facades and shattering windows across the capital. Panic spread as columns of smoke rose on the horizon. The Kosovar president sent a desperate encrypted plea to Tirana, Pristina to Tirana. They're breaking through everywhere. If reinforcements cannot arrive today, the city is lost. The Albanian reply was cautious, even hesitant. Tirana, Pristina. Forces are assembling. Hold until tomorrow. But tomorrow would be too late. Serbian troops surged down the Podujevo road, supported by airstrikes that cratered every intersection ahead of them. By nightfall, armored spearheads reached the city's northern suburbs. Fighting raged in the districts, where defenders staged ambushes in narrow streets. The crack of rifles echoed from apartment balconies. Molotov cocktails rained from rooftops. Yet the momentum never broke. By the second day, Serbia tightened its grip. Mitrovica was fully under control, its bridges secured and crossings fortified. In the west, Serbian units reached Peja, cutting the corridor to Albania. Convoys attempting to bring aid from Kukes were halted by airstrikes on the border roads. In the south, the Jaroševac garrison fought desperately, but with the capital under siege, their position became untenable. All roads pointed to Pristina. At dawn on the second day, Serbian artillery unleashed a rolling barrage, pounding defensive lines kilometer by kilometer. Then the armor advanced, supported by mechanized infantry clearing streets block by block. Helicopters ferried troops to seize key junctions before the defenders could regroup. By noon, Serbian forces were in the heart of the city. Smoke and fire blanketed the skyline. Government ministries were evacuated under fire, their staff fleeing through side streets. The Kosovar president was whisked out by helicopter just minutes before Serbian units secured the government district. By evening, the Serbian flag flew over Pristina. The two-day campaign was over. Kosovo's organized resistance had collapsed. Some scattered units fled south toward the Albanian border. Others melted into the mountains. But as a state, Kosovo was gone, reabsorbed into Serbia's control with stunning speed. The victory sent shockwaves across the Balkans. In Tirana, fury erupted. Albania called emergency meetings with Croatia and Bulgaria, demanding action to counter Serbia's rising power. In Zagreb, leaders agreed, warning that if Serbia was left unchecked, the entire regional balance would collapse. And in Sofia, generals quietly promised to lend support to any coalition that would contain Belgrade. But while new alliances were already forming, one consequence was immediate. With Kosovo back in Serbian hands, the insurgents who had been bleeding Macedonia suddenly found their bases cut off. Fighters who once slipped across the border at night now faced the reality of Serbian troops stationed in every valley they used. Supplies dried up. Communications faltered, and with Macedonia's own garrisons tightening their defenses in Tetovo and the Polog Valley, the insurgent campaign began to unravel. In Skopje, a message was sent north. Skopje to Belgrade, your strike has broken their back. Our northwest is quieting. Macedonia owes Serbia a debt. The reply came swiftly, from a president now confident in his triumph. Belgrade to Skopje, the shield holds. Stand firm. Together we decide the future. But elsewhere, not everyone was celebrating. In Sarajevo, anger boiled as Republika Srpska leaders declared they would no longer answer to the Federation. What began as a proclamation would soon ignite gunfire. And while Bosnia edged toward civil war, the Balkans braced for the next widening of the fire. In Banja Luka, the Parliament of Republika Srpska gathered in emergency session. Flags of the entity draped the walls as deputies voted overwhelmingly in favor of independence. Within hours, their declaration was broadcast across Serb-language channels. Republika Srpska would no longer recognize the authority of Sarajevo. The reaction in the Bosnian capital was furious. The Federation's president called it an illegal coup, warning that no territory would be allowed to break away. The denial came not only with words, but with mobilization orders. Army units loyal to the Federation began moving toward key checkpoints along the inter-entity boundary line. Within days, the first firefights broke out. Militants loyal to Republika Srpska set up roadblocks near Doboj and Brčko, halting convoys and clashing with police. In the hills outside Prijedor, gunfire echoed at dawn as local units exchanged fire across makeshift trenches. Sarajevo responded with reinforcements, but these columns came under sudden mortar fire, leaving burned-out vehicles smoldering on the roadside. The fingerprints of Belgrade were everywhere. Serbian supplies flowed quietly across the Drina, carried on back roads under cover of night. Ammunition, radios, even small groups of advisors, all ensuring that the uprising in Republika Srpska would not collapse. Zagreb watched with growing alarm. In the Croatian capital, debates ended swiftly. The Federation could not be abandoned. Trucks carrying aid, weapons, and volunteers began to roll east, and soon Croatian-backed fighters were reinforcing positions near Mostar and Tuzla. What emerged was not yet a formal war, but a proxy battlefield where Serbia and Croatia stared each other down through their Bosnian allies. While Bosnia burned in fragments, diplomacy elsewhere began to harden into shape. In Tirana, the leaders of Albania, Croatia, and Bulgaria met under the banner of a new coalition. They called it the Two Seas Alliance, symbolizing the Adriatic to the west and the Black Sea to the east. Its stated purpose was defensive, to contain Serbia's growing reach. Its unspoken purpose was offensive, to counterbalance Belgrade's victory in Kosovo. At the signing ceremony, Albania's prime minister declared, "No single power will dictate the fate of the Balkans. Together, we are stronger than any one state." Croatia pledged brigades for joint operations. Bulgaria promised air bases and artillery, and Albania offered to open supply corridors to any member in need. Almost immediately, the coalition invited Slovenia to join. In Ljubljana, the government accepted without hesitation. Overnight, the Two Seas Alliance grew into a bloc stretching from the Adriatic to the Carpathians. In Belgrade, the response was defiant. The Serbian president mocked the coalition as a wall built on sand, claiming that it would crumble at the first true test. Yet behind closed doors, the escalation was taken seriously. Serbia already had Macedonia tied to its flank in the Balkan Shield pact. Now, its leaders looked to the Adriatic. Montenegro sat quietly between the blocks, its government nervous but undecided. For weeks, Podgorica tried to avoid choosing sides, but geography and history left little room for neutrality. Late one evening, a direct message arrived from Belgrade. Belgrade to Podgorica. Your coast is unguarded. Alone, you invite danger. With us, you are safe. Hours later, after tense cabinet debates, Montenegro sent its reply. Podgorica to Belgrade. We will not stand alone. The Balkan Shield extends to the Adriatic. The alliance was sealed. Serbia, Macedonia, and now Montenegro formed a contiguous bloc stretching from the Danube to the coast. The Balkan Shield was no longer a promise, it was a reality. On the ground, the balance of power looked uncertain. In Kosovo, Serbian troops consolidated control, sweeping roads and fortifying garrisons. In Bosnia, firefights flickered daily, small clashes that could at any moment flare into a wider war. In eastern Macedonia, Bulgarian patrols still probed across the highlands, though large offensives had paused. And in the northwest, Macedonia's relief from insurgent attacks gave the front a rare silence. But the silence would not last. While the Balkans seemed locked in chaos, a new storm was brewing further east. In Turkey, large-scale troop movements began pouring into the Thrace region, massing around the city of Edirne, just kilometers from the Greek and Bulgarian borders. For Athens and Sofia, this was a chilling development. Was Ankara preparing for simple drills, or was it a prelude to a direct land invasion? The answer would come soon enough.